12 months in football is a very long time. One day you're sat there waiting for the new year to begin under an exciting Portuguese manager, and then walking home soon afterwards having been beat 4-1 by Swansea. And then 12 months later you're sat here thinking, Christ, was that 12 months ago? Well, here we are in the Brewdog in Reading at Monday lunchtime, which is basically the only time we can come to a Brewdog in Reading and record a podcast and it not be really, really loud, for the Tilehurst End podcast Christmas special, episode 214, with your host Mark Mayer. And I'm joined by three excellent, we've got a kind of generational sweep of Tilehurst End bloggers here, haven't we? To start off at the very top with Dan Wimbush. How's it going, mate?
Mark, delighted to be here. Thank you very much. I think this pub has had more owners than Reading have had managers in recent years. Litten Tree, Rind, Public, I think it was called.
Dogma,
it's been Dogma as well.
That was when I started.
So a fitting venue to talk about another year of managerial change.
Absolutely. And the current editor of the TilehurstEnd.com, Simeon Pickup, is here as well. How's it going, mate?
Hello, thanks for having me.
And making your first appearance on the podcast is Adam Jones. How's it going, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm your match preview writer.
Yes.
You're a great match preview writer.
Absolutely. Well, you'll come into your own later on in the show when we talk about what on earth is going to happen in 2020. Or 2020. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. It still feels weird to say we're going into 2020, but you know, there we are. But we'll also have our Christmas awards in a little bit. So we're going to jump into a recap of the year now, talk about exactly what on earth has gone on at Reading FC in the past 12 months.
Back the boys and make some noise for the Tilehurst End podcast. Come on, you Oz!
Right, guys, cast your minds back to January 2019, and as I mentioned in the intro, the fact that Swansea beat Reading 4-1 on the opening day of the year to leave us feeling like we're kind of going over the same thing we basically have been going over the same thing every year. But let's just think about how January and February panned out then. We were still struggling for results. If you think in January, we had the Bolton 1-1 draw that we conceded in the last minute at. Went to Derby and lost 2-1. We did get Gomez's first win with a 2-0 win over what was a frankly awful Nottingham Forest team. So January, February, the way it kind of panned out, the most sort of relevant thing I think for us now, Sim, is the 5 loanees that came in for that January. What were your kind of feelings at the time? Did these guys really arrive as the saviours that they were going to become, or were they actually guys who turned up, we thought, you know, not too sure about this?
I thought it was a massive risk at the time, to be honest. It was 5 players who had not really convinced all that much at their previous clubs. I think Miazga cut short a bad spell in France. Oliveira, obviously, not doing well at Norwich. Similar with Ajaria and Baker, and it just felt like a massive gamble, bringing in players that perhaps didn't have the fight, didn't have the spirit to dig in for a relegation fight. And I was unconvinced at the time, but a couple of months on, clearly they did very well. Gomez, to his credit, managed to get a lot of fight, a lot of spirit out of them, much more than I expected, and you have to look back on it as one of our better transfer windows in quite a while, I think.
Yeah, funnily enough, the first of the 5 to kind of make the biggest impact, Adam, was the Nelson mania, as Nelson Oliveira hit the ground running. And it was funny how there was a few weeks, wasn't there, where we genuinely thought this is the striker that we've been begging for years almost.
Yeah, I think so. And to be honest, my 2 main concerns was Martinez and Ajaria. Now, in terms of Martinez, I saw the 7-5 loss against Arsenal. We don't really speak about that anymore. It gives me flashbacks. But the way he dealt with Ledgerwood's goal, he basically palmed it into the back of the net. I was like, oh my God, are we really relying on him in a relegation battle? And with Ajaria, I mean, some of the things that Rangers fans were saying on Twitter, this is why you never trust Twitter. Yeah. I think one because of the Ajaria thing, and 2 because of the general election result. So, but in terms of Nelson Oliveira, I thought he was going to be our saviour, and in the end, he was kind of our least effective loanee, really. Even though he wasn't bad, he did provide some important moments, but I guess that just says a lot really about the 5 loanees.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, really, because Martinez, again, is someone I had reservations over. I think Lewis Baker was the last one we signed, and I kind of thought we've got a load of central midfielders already. We had, Eza Talahi was still on the books then, and actually that meant we had too many loanees to go into one matchday squad. And Baker, in the end, I think, probably with Miazga, turned out to be two of the best Reading signings, in terms of loan signings. It felt on the level of like Matthew Upson when we signed Luke Chadwick for that playoff run, and he was
Gorks originally. It was a really great spell, because I think you could look at each of those five, and we discussed each of them, and they all made a difference in their own way. They all had their moments, whether it was the amazing stops of Marces, whether it was the key Oliveira goals, the Ejaria skill show, and that goal he scored, was it against Rotherham, I think, in the March. And that's what they did. They sort of gave Reading a good spine, and that's what they had lacked for the past couple of years, since we'd lost that kind of line of Williams in the midfield up to Kermorgan with Al Habsi in goal. You sort of filled in those pieces. Even Liam Moore, who you would say is probably the spine of that defence in the playoff team, he'd sort of been a bit lost with McShane's loss of form and the various people they'd brought in. So it gave Reading that solid lineup, and you say, great, I can rely on Oliveira up front, I can rely on my goalkeeper, Miazga's shored up the defence, and you've got Baker and Ejaria in that midfield to sort of do different roles. So it was one of our best transfer windows ever. It's certainly in terms of loanees. You look back to sort of the last Nigel Howe transfer window before that, which was the summer of 2015. 2015, where he brought in a load of loanees like Vidra as well.
Ola John
and thankfully this one proved more successful. So certainly laid the foundations, and as much as Jose Gomez gets the credit, and rightly so, for helping us stay up, would it have happened without those five? I certainly don't think so.
No, that's the thing, isn't it? We did it in the wrong way almost. In the summer you sign the players for your spine, and in January you go and add in maybe the winger or something like that just to complement it. We did it the other way around and built a team from that, and the results did slowly come. We were, I think, from the back end of 2018, we just kept conceding late goals, didn't we? That was the sort of tale of, I suppose, Paul Clement / the early Gomez time. And then as we got into March, April and May, that's when we started picking up points late on ourselves. You think of Ipswich and Wigan, we got a point at Norwich, which obviously, there were loads of late goals in that one. And those sort of results were... they were different. We hadn't really had those sort of results in a while, and to go for the Wigan game in particular, looking back on that now, it's so hard to say that. For me, I still find it such a weird game, because we should have been 3-1 down in that game, and what the history that would have happened, if we hadn't gone and win that game, it's such a turning point moment in and of itself, isn't it?
It's a turning point off and on the pitch as well. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it later in terms of golden moments, things, but Club 1871 was, I don't mean to do too much of a disservice, but it was on its knees. And it just so happened that Wigan game, they had arranged a deal with the brewery to give out some free beer tokens, which swelled the attendance. And also then you had a dramatic win in the last few moments, and suddenly that end was rocking. And I'm sure the players, it's been mentioned in interviews, they really appreciate that support. So for the fortunes of the club off the pitch, that's also had a good a good point of the year and a real sort of turning moment for it. So it sort of transcended on the pitch matters as well.
Yeah, and it did, and it kind of rounded itself off. I suppose you could say the pinnacle of Club 1871 so far has been the Portugal Day, and that in and of itself is a moment, like, I must admit I wasn't there, but the game itself was completely forgettable. But to have those sort of moments, it sits alongside. I remember having the Ginger Day for Kitson and Sidwell. Like, was there Pants Day? But that was a bad thing, wasn't it?
Players are not trying sufficiently.
Yeah, so those sort of
Wrexham.
Yeah, well, that's probably a good enough sign. If they're playing Wrexham, then that probably was a sign it's true. But to have those sort of moments going as well, and it meant that the back end of last season was a season I actually really enjoyed, Adam, and it's one of those seasons that you kind of finished off where almost we didn't really want it to finish.
Yeah, and I went to Portugal Day, and even though it was a 0-0 draw, it was quite entertaining because we had the likes of Loda, Barrett, Elise, and we thought they could really push us on next season. And even though, again, we did draw, it kind of, the atmosphere made me go away feeling really happy and really optimistic going into the next season. So it's not just about it's just as much about off the pitch matters as it is on the pitch.
And when it came to the optimism as we finished, I mean the optimism level was so hard to sort of gauge, because there are always those fans who think, oh well, we're rubbish. A lot of fans didn't buy into Gomez, and a lot of fans didn't necessarily think we were playing that well. So there were still a lot of people who thought, nothing special going on here. There were a lot of fans who loved Gomez, thought he was genius, thought we were going to go sign loads of good players and therefore push on. And then probably, I suppose, you got the majority somewhere in the middle. And I suppose that's kind of irregular in a way, because the way we did finish the season, and it was a lot of positives, maybe another club or a less jaded fan base, it would have been a lot more optimistic. So.
Yeah, I guess so, but I think you've got to factor in the massive hangover we had from the Clement and the Goulet era, where fans were really disenchanted from it, and Gomez did have a lot of work to do, and I don't think it was just that he came in from a kind of a neutral starting position, could then kick on. He had a lot of work to do behind the scenes to bring the club together in terms of the fan base, bringing young players through again, which had kind of fallen away a little bit, and whatever we do say about his long-term legacy, having got sacked unfortunately this season, the work he did in the first couple of months was really good in just getting the club back on track, and it did in some ways I think lay the foundations for what Bowen can now go on and do, just in terms of lifting the mood, making us feel more positive, and just giving us reasons to be cheerful, basically.
Yeah, we went into the summer, and the kind of main news out of the summer, I suppose, Liam Moore became captain, players like Liam Kelly and John Daddy Bodvarsson left, players that we weren't really too fussed about leaving, to be honest. Probably would have preferred to get a bit more money for them than we did. We exiled a group of senior pros, Gunter and McCleary most notably. Some of them left. Vito Bononi was in amongst it, wasn't he? And he did end up leaving, Mark McNulty as well. That summer was obviously played out amongst the backdrop of being under a sort of soft transfer embargo. How much did the culture of the season and of the club in general, Wim, change when after the Sheffield Wednesday defeat we signed Lucas Shaw for £5 million, George Puskas for £8 million, a Serie A goalkeeper on a free, and two other loanies of players, well, certainly over Ejaria, someone we knew of. How significant was that as a moment to change the sort of way we saw the season?
Well, in terms of Gomez, it was awful for him because expectations went through the roof. You can't break your transfer record and sign a player from Inter Milan, sign a proven Championship striker, and bring back the likes of Miazga and Ejaria, and then start to struggle and lose home game after home game to Charlton, to Blackburn, to Sheffield Wednesday. You just don't get that bedding in time. If he hadn't had that sort of, and he was having to go with Danny Loader up front and Elise, maybe fans just say, look, we are going to struggle, we're going to be in a relegation battle again this year, maybe build as we get towards January, but you have to hit the ground running with those kind of transfers. And yes, he got a bit unlucky with injuries. I think Zhao picked up a knock early doors, and he didn't quite get that team on the pitch, but game after game they didn't deliver. And when you actually look back, and we've just discussed some of those games in the previous season, it shouldn't really have been a surprise, because as good as the results were in key moments, we did have to scrape a last minute winner against Ipswich. We did have to come from the dead to beat Wigan. This wasn't Jose Gomez. This wasn't like when Brian McDermott took over from Brendan Rodgers a decade ago now. After about 5 or 6 games, the results were consistent. We were smashing teams, and you really felt that we were building up for next season. Gomez always felt we were getting the job done. So it was his big chance. He had a chance, and it was unfair to him because we signed those players so late because of the soft transfer embargo. I think we went on tour and were playing. I think, wasn't he talking about something? I had a complete squad of kids at one stage.
Yeah, basically.
At least a dozen there.
Yeah, we had the likes of Teddy Howe was kind of the right back because Yiadon was away, was the AFCON. So we basically had a back four of none of the players apart from Liam Moore was going to play in the season, basically.
Exactly. So you start. He's already behind the 8 ball to start, and then expectations are risen tenfold by all these late signings. So he has to try to integrate them. Did he want all of those signings? How much was it Mark Bowen? How much was it things behind the scenes, investments for the club's future? So we'll never really know. But I said he was always up against it from the start, and unfortunately he couldn't rise to that challenge.
Yeah, and it's funny because we had the week, basically. I always think that it lasted longer, the good start to the season, but we had the week where we beat Cardiff on TV, Puskas looked brilliant, went to West Brom in midweek, we played really well and were quite unfortunate not to win. Then we went to Huddersfield, who were obviously terrible at the time, but we comfortably beat them. And it's those sort of comfortable 2-0 victories away from home, you think, hang on, we got a bit of a team here. The 3-5-2 was clicking, but I remember talking on the podcast the sense that every single time Reading have a good formation or something in the Championship, other teams find us out. Yeah. And it's almost like Jaap Stam was almost surprised that other teams found us out. Gomez, obviously, the nature of the squad didn't really allow us to have a plan B, or a convincing plan B at least. And then things started slipping down, 5 defeats in 6 in the league, and that's when Gomez went. Looking back on it now, Adam, do we think that Gomez with what we know, was it a hasty decision to get rid of him? Was it a bit too quick, or do you think actually now we've seen it play out, it was the right decision?
I think because of the candidates that were available at the time, the likes of Mark Hughes, the likes of Chris Hughton, I think we had to make that decision to sack him. At the time, I was obviously gutted that he went, because he did bring a lot of joy to the club, but I think with the past couple of seasons and the fact that we were down at the bottom of the table, we needed to make that change and have that new manager bounce. Little did we know that Mark Bowen was going to be in charge.
Yeah, well, that is the funny thing, isn't it? Is that when I think who was the first name? It was Mark Hughes was the first name floated around, and when Gomez went, I thought, it doesn't feel to me like the sort of continuity sacking. It felt to me like it was the mantra that had failed as much as the actual manager himself, and therefore, even if it was early in the season, maybe a change in mantra, a bit more of a sturdy, experienced, steely kind of manager was going to suit us best. Weirdly, we've kind of ended up in the middle of that, because we got the continuity candidate who has a history of being a Mark Hughes assistant, which is obviously not the same sort of style. Bowen came in, and I suppose Ben Thomas asked us in the mailbag. We'll kind of drop in the questions as we go, and it's a good question, because he asked, do we think that if Bowen had been in it from the start of the season, would we be in a better position now compared to Gomez? Because for me, I think we kind of had to get through that period of trying the Gomez football, and we learnt a lot more about the players and the squad, and since then we've kind of been better for it in a way.
Yeah, I think in that early stage of the season it became clear that the problem was we just were too easy to play against, basically. We played some good football, created a lot of chances, but just doing the little things, being aggressive off the ball, working hard, we just didn't quite have that, and Gomez wasn't quite getting it out of the players, basically. And because we had that period, the job for Bowen when he came in was quite clear. I think if he'd just been kind of dropped in at the start of the season, he might well have done a better job, but it's kind of hard to tell if he'd been able to kind of react to the clear problems that he had when he came in, basically. He was kind of a continuity manager. He didn't have to change too much. Say with keeping the 3-5-2, it was more kind of evolution rather than revolution, basically. And yeah, it's worked out well, and as it's gone. But I think also, just going back to the from the owner's point of view, they've had a bad experience with the Gomez appointment, because it took ages to appoint him in the first place. I think Scott Marshall's there for 2 games.
Far too long, really.
4 games, I think it was.
Yeah, but this time he's learnt from that mistake, and he's instead decided to make a much quicker appointment, and we've done well from it. So credit to De Jong for being a lot more decisive.
Are we all now satisfied that Mark Bowen didn't just go and appoint himself?
Yeah, yeah.
Are we confident that it wasn't the sort of, oh, I'd like that, oh, well, you can have it, Mark. Oh,
I mean, the memes
Mark.
were great. The memes were absolutely fantastic, so thank you to all those people. I loved one of him shaking his own hand. That was great. No, look, he doesn't have that kind of power. I think he came out straight away and said, I can't do that. The owners have asked me to come and do a job. Look, of course he's going to be, I don't want to say in the ear, but he's very prominent. He's in a great position, but it's exactly the same position that Brian McDermott found himself in when Brendan Rodgers went. Now, look, should we have done a more thorough recruitment process? Possibly, but you look at the candidates that are out there wasn't somebody screaming. I mean, everyone said, oh, Chris Hughton would have been great, but Chris Hughton clearly didn't want the job.
We'd have had to pay him about 50 grand a week, which we don't have.
Yeah, and look, but as we said, it was a continuity kind of appointment, because Bowen had been a technical advisor the year before and sporting director from the summer, so he knew the players. Reading had to hit the ground running. I think the ambition of the owners this season is they want to be challenging for the playoffs.
Oh yeah,
they don't just want to sit there and get a manager in that's going to take 6 months to learn the system, and then we'll float around. They want to get on a run, and we're probably just about at that level where you could see us possibly making a challenge. I don't think it's likely, but they are still sort of within that range. So he didn't appoint himself, but he was certainly in a great position to be asked.
And he started really well as well. He won 3 of his first 4. To be fair, one of my games of the year has been that QPR away game, which for me was just a classic championship 2-2 draw. A lot of teams both going at it, a lot of quality on show, a lot of controversial moments and stuff. So I thoroughly enjoyed going down to that game, and I suppose we always knew that the Brentford and Leeds game is going to be very difficult. We lost them both 1-0. and it kind of, I suppose, panned out in a large extent to what we thought. Since then, bar a kind of 10-minute period for George Puskas at Wigan, and I suppose the Derby game we can talk about as well. We have kind of simmered down a little bit, and do we think that is a case of the classic new manager bounce? Do we think that Mark Bowen has started changing things and making errors? Do we think that the players are just kind of not actually continuing their own motivation, having had the new manager? Are we actually concerned that things have slightly simmered down under him?
I think my observation is because he's so inexperienced, I think you always feel like he's going to run out of steam at some point. I think he made a really good start, obviously with a new manager bounce. I do think it was bounce, although he did do very well, but you do always feel like it's not going to continue. I think we're going to struggle for consistency for the rest of the season, but we'll just see where we get to.
Yeah, and Wim, it's an interesting one, isn't it? When you get to, we're 16th now, we're 7 points clear with the drop zone, 11 points away from playoffs. What would you say Bowen whatever it is, has actually achieved now? What would you say is his biggest achievement in the few months he's been in charge?
Well, he's got Reading playing more pragmatically. He's shown that he's a manager that is happy to adapt. Yes, he's made some mistakes. Some of his substitutions have been baffling. But look, he's shown that I know what the Championship's like. I know how you win games of football at this level, and he's got those wins. It's not been great and pretty, but going back to what Adam said, I think the absence of John Swift has been massive.
Yeah.
Because he's been Reading's most creative player this whole season, and as soon as he got injured sort of around that Leeds-Brentford game, I think they played him against Leeds and he wasn't fully fit, and that aggravated it. The chances dried up, and Ovijaria became an easy target for teams to sort of double team, and then you were having to play people like Pele and Rinomota in the midfield, just not creative enough. He's clearly recognised that by bringing Charlie Adam back into the fold, because he's realised, look, we've got no width, our wing backs aren't doing the job they need to do. It's interesting that Omar Richards has been dropped now for Tyler Blackett.
He's not. Was he on the bench on the weekend?
Yeah, Omar Richards was on the bench.
Yeah, so that's because Blackett he didn't feature for ages, did he, under Bowen? And to be fair, Gomez didn't like him either. But that's the thing. I think that's an insight into what Bowen is like as a manager. You said it's not been pretty. He's the first manager in, you could argue, since Stam. Actually, Stam had a little bit of about him where he was not afraid to go away from home and play out a 0-0 draw. He was not afraid to go to Stoke, and the nature of the game was a bit embarrassing and everything, but he wasn't worried about that. He was perfectly happy to go there, get a point, on you go sort of thing, and that's unusual for what we've had recently.
But that's a credit to the manager, because as I say, you look at the injuries they've had no Obita, they've had no Swift, they've had no Puskás, they were without Ajaria for a game or two as well. Charlie Adams only just getting back to fitness. He's looked at the resources he's got and gone, right, well, I'm not going to go try and chuck everybody at Stoke. They haven't even got the players to play a fast, quick counter-attacking game. You've not got Mo Barrow. You've not got a flying Gareth McCleary anymore. What can you realistically do? And he said, to your point, I'm going to go and try and get a point here. And Reading have got a point. And not just that, the last time Reading got relegated in a competitive fashion was the 2007-8 season in the Premier League. And the whole reason we went down is because we went into games against the likes of Fulham and Bolton, tried to play football and got picked off. And that 6 point swing, they talk about 6 pointers. Reading are trying to not allow teams to do that, and Stoke, a team below them, that you've just denied them a vital 3 points at home while picking up a point yourself. So it's not pretty. I can understand why some fans are like, oh God, Bowen's so boring, he's dull. But that is going to results like that will keep us in the division, and that is your absolute bottom main, low on your list of priorities, but it's also at the top of your list of priorities. That's what you've got to get done.
Yeah.
And he's doing that so far.
And you look at the results we've had so far in the Burn, we've only lost one of our away games, and that was by a single goal at Brentford, which on another day we probably would have got a point at. All of our defeats have all been by a single goal, and we've had 2-3-0 wins in that. And actually, we've got a plus goal difference at the moment. And I probably should have found out beforehand, but the last time we had a plus goal difference at this stage of the season, I don't think even understand in the playoff season.
I was going to say, I think we've got a better goal difference now than when we finished third.
Yeah, funnily enough, and Huddersfield also had a crap goal difference. Surprise, we drew 0-0 in the playoff final. So I suppose as we sit here now with 16th, I think we're probably just about satisfied, are we, guys? Would we say that in terms of going on into the next 12 months, we'll talk about the 2020 preview a bit later on, but generally speaking, I suppose especially with that 3-0 win against Derby on the weekend, which has set us up very nicely, we're not in too bad a position, are we?
No, it's a good foundation to be moving on from, and sometimes you need that. It's not always about just flying out the traps and doing as well as you can for a really short period of time. You just need to take it slowly and gradually build up, and to his credit he's doing that, and hopefully when we do pick up a bit more momentum, when key players really start to strut their stuff a little bit and Swift regains fitness, hopefully Zhao goes on a bit of a run because he's got a few goals to his name now. Hopefully we can pick up a little bit more momentum and go from there. Yeah.
I think consistency is key. I think if we consolidate something like a 14th place finish, it's an improvement on last season. It gives us a platform to then go on and aim for bigger things. But I think all realistic Reading fans would aim for mid-table.
Yeah. Well, especially with the way the playoffs are at the moment, I think there's something like the 4th down to 11th is probably about 4 points in or something. So that's probably not really going to change between now and April. So we'll see if we can get into that rabble and what happens from then on. And I suppose we'll talk about 2020 in a bit more detail later on. But for now, we are going to have to face up to the reality of having to hand out some awards, because it is the Christmas special awards do.
You're listening to the Tilehurst End podcast by Reading fans for Reading fans.
Right, everyone, I don't mean to alarm us as we begin the Best Player Award for the last 12 months, but the winner in 2018 was John Daddy Bodvarsson. So no matter what, I think we've got an improvement on our hands here, which is nice to say. Just to go through the previous winners, we've been doing this is a 6th year. More than actually. The Tilehurst End Awards. We had Alex McCarthy in 2013, Jordan Abita was the best player in 2014, Ollie Norwood 2015, Ali Al-Habsi 2016, Liam Moore won the 2017 award, and then John Daddy Bodvarsson last year. Nominations then, we've already had Ollie and Johnny from the podcast have sent in Obi Ejaria for their best player of 2019. I am going to throw Andy Yiadom into the mix. I think he was harshly denied the overall club's player of the season award in May, and I think did he win the Tilehurst End version? I think the Tilehurst End Player of the Year award is always different to the club's main one, isn't it?
Yeah, Yiadom got it.
Yeah, and obviously Ridham also got it for the main club, didn't he? So I'm going to throw in Andy Yiadom as a case of being not, I wouldn't say he's that classic consistent right back, but I would say he is one of the most important players in our team, because when he's not playing, we don't have someone who can bomb up and down the wing as well as he does. He can put a ball in, he can get a shot off. As a player, I think he's probably one of our most valuable assets, generally speaking.
Yeah, I know we talk a lot about Swift as being one of our key creative players, but Yiadom's the kind of player that when he gets on the ball, he drives you up the pitch. He has those little moments where he really kind of drives at the opposition that other wing-backs can't really do. And Gunter obviously isn't suited to that, and we miss it a lot. Abita, I think, could do it a while ago before he had his injury problems. Yiadom is a game changer, basically. He's got that ability to take someone on and really come up with a proper spark out wide, and we badly miss it.
Is that your official nomination then?
He is indeed.
So we've got 2 in for there, Adam Edge or cards laid down.
I think it's between Miazga and Ejaria. Miazga is because I think before January, when he came in, we had Olori and Moore as our centre-backs. And as much as I liked Olori and how fast he was, he just wasn't cutting it really. And Miazga came in and shored up the defence and made a real difference. But I'm going to go with Ovi Ejaria because he can bring fans to the Madejski Stadium just as an individual on his own. Just some of the things, some of the showboating, some of the tricks, and his technical ability. He's one of the most technically gifted players I think we've seen at the Madejski Stadium for a long while now.
William then?
Yeah, I find it hard to argue with either of those two. I quite like Miazga. Again, for the reason Adam said, he's really solidified, and when you consider that the first half of the season was all about staying up, I think he did that fine, and he's done well to start this season. It's been difficult because I don't think anyone's had a massively consistent 12 months. Ejaria and Yiadom, talking just in terms of impacts, you probably still have to give Martinez a shout. Just for those sort of first 5 months and how important he was for us staying in this division. Would we be here without him? Maybe not. But yeah, you do have to sort of look at the year in whole. John Swift also deserves a shout, but more so for the last 6 months. I've been really impressed with how he's bounced back.
Yeah, I think he's been our best player of this season so far. I think he's actually been more important than Ejaria because, as you said earlier, when he's not here, then that's you really notice it, don't you?
Yeah, but I think I will give the nod to Ejaria just because, again, as Adam said, he gets you into the ground. He's one of those few players. He's like Jimmy Kebe, like Modou Barry to a lesser extent. He gets you excited when he's on the ball. You lean, you do that classic. You start to lean forward a little bit.
You put your drink down.
Yeah, or you stand up and you think, go on, do something.
Yeah.
The only thing he's missing is sometimes that end product. He does the trickery, but then what happens then? But then again, there's a good reason he's on loan at Reading and not playing in the Premier League. So that's the area of his game he's going to have to develop if he wants to kick on. But in terms of 2019, I think I'd have to give it to Ejaria.
Yeah, and he's a young player as well. It's hard. It's weird that you see so many of these, the sort of, especially at this time of year, you see the top 10 Championship young player articles, and he's not in any of them. And them guys, he's at 21 still. Like, guys, you have to know about this player. But I guess for our
That's
point
because he
of view,
doesn't show up in the stats, Mark.
Yeah,
he won't
yeah.
show. He hasn't got a boatload of assists. He hasn't got a boatload of goals. I think he scored that showstopper against West Brom. But I think is that the only time he scored this season?
he scored against
Huddersfield as well.
He did get the deflected effort against Brentford, or Luton rather, which I still think is probably an own goal, really. But as what he's great at is the transitions, isn't it? Bringing defence out into attack, and that doesn't. I don't think there is really a stat that shows that. And unless obviously you go to Reading every week, maybe you don't know about him so much. But
that's one of the key things that Bowen's done. He's played Ejaria a lot higher up, which I think has paid off really well. Previously he was a little bit deeper, I think, and Swift was a little bit higher up under Gomez, and it's paid off really nicely playing higher up. I know recently he's been kind of more of a winger in the last 2 games, not necessarily hugging the touchline, but maybe drifting in a little bit. But Bowen's still been pragmatic about getting the most out of him, and it's hopefully going to pay off.
What we want to see is more of that second goal against Derby on Saturday. We've not really touched on that Derby game, but the move and the team move. Okay, it was against 10 men, but it was absolute classic. Getting the ball out wide. It's a lovely ball from Swift and Zhao, being in the right place. It's real striker's instinct to get that goal.
and that's the sort of striker he is.
Exactly.
So we've got to use him that way, really.
And that is a real great example of players all playing to their strength and it combining as a team. So if we can see more of that in 2020, the future is really bright for this side.
Yes, and for the 2019 Player of the Year award, that goes to Ovie Ejaria. So congratulations, clink of the glass to him. And we move on now to what has become the absolute curse of Reading Football Club, the Most Improved Award for 2019. Some previous winners: Jordan Obita is in 2013, Jake Cooper in 2014, Nick Blackman in 2015, Gareth McCleary in 2016, Liam Kelly in 17, Yaku Meite last year, and I suppose of the lot of them, Meite probably had the strongest 12 months to proceed his awards. So we've got it's a bit of a shame that I am going to have to curse his career, but I think John Swift is probably my nod for this season. Ollie has sent him a Sam Baldock, Johnny has gone for Yeardon. I think Swift because this time 12 months ago we were begging for John Swift to become a good player. He had shown little glimpses. He didn't have anything like the sort of strength or physicality, even the mental determination and the sheer will to be the central midfielder that you have to be in the Championship, no matter what sort of, whether you're playmaker or whatever. This season I think we've actually seen a real an overall increase in his game. Yes, he's probably picking up more assists than he was before, but just generally I found him a much more capable player, a bit more of a leader as well, you could say, and he is my nod for Most Improved. So Adam, I'll throw it over to you with your nomination.
I agree. I'm going to go with John Swift. I mean, you look at the ratings that on Twitter and some of the ratings that he's got, like 7, 8, 9, and they've been well deserved. I think in some ways he has been underrated, but I think he has struggled with injuries in recent years. I think that's hampered his career slightly, but he is, again, like Ejaria, very technically gifted, and he has improved a lot and probably become one of the most important players really in the first team this season.
Sim?
Yeah, Swift as well for me. He seems just like a lot more mature player at the moment, and going back to what I said earlier about Ejaria, being able to bring Swift deeper into a role where he needs to be a lot more disciplined, playing deeper, more defensive duties, where he's going to have to control the game that a little bit more. I don't think he could have done that 12 months ago. I remember him playing in the midfield too with Kelly against Ipswich at home in that 4-0 defeat a couple of seasons ago, and he looked completely lost there.
Yeah, last season's comedy moment, I think that wasn't
exactly,
it?
Yeah. But to be able to play him in that kind of role now, as Bowen currently is typically, shows a lot more maturity from him and a big improvement all round for him.
I'm gonna throw Andy Rinomhota's name into the mix, because I think it's, how quickly he's gone from being a fringe young player to, and I know he broke through right at the end of last season, but it was only sort of around October, November he established himself in the team. And you look now, as we go into 2020, he's one of the first names on the team sheet. A young player, 22 years of age, and he's playing week in, week out, and he is almost that first midfielder you put on the team sheet, because he does the sort of
the balancing role.
Exactly, and he sort of puts himself about. He's still learning, and you can see him coming through. But I think in terms of just pure growth, over a 12-month period, I'd say it's Rinomhota. I do take the Swift point, but I think we've seen this level from Swift before. If you remember his first sort of 6 months under Stam, he was bossing games up until he got injured. I think, was it Brighton away in the Cup or Barnsley, someone like that? He picked up a big injury, and he never really sort of got back to those heights. So if we're talking in sort of maybe a 6-month time frame, you could say it's Swift, but I think over 12 months I'm going to vote for Rinomhota.
Yeah, it's funny with Rinomhota, isn't it? Because when he was, Paul Clement, to his credit, did give him a lot of games in that sort of late 2018 spell, and I remember him being in the team and just thinking, what is his role really? What is his actual, what does he do for the team? And I think there was was it the Stoke game that was the 2-2 draw, which was Clement's last game actually, was when he produced that real driving run into the box and a
first
ball
December,
into ball into the far post, which admittedly got deflected, but McNulty scored it. And that was from then on, I really kind of felt like this guy actually knows his own game and knows how to bring it out in the Championship. And
what was curious for me was how Gomez then just dropped him for Pele at the start of the season, and he found himself on the bench, and you're just like, this is the player who's just one player of the season.
And he played wing back at Wickham away, and I was just no, he's not a wing back whatsoever.
And that was one of the things I think that didn't turn me fully, but I started really looking at Gomez, thinking, what are you doing? This is a player to build around, not a loanee that's come in from Monaco that's not really showing a lot.
There was another game in January, I think it was Derby away, when he put Rinomhota at right back for no particularly good reason. Gomez just tried to overthink things too much, and sometimes you do just need to play players where they're best at, basically, rather than trying to come up with some elaborate plan for how to deploy him. Just
and just to, I suppose, a bit of a tangent, but Gomez was also the one who put two strikers at wing back in the defeat earlier. Was that earlier this season?
One of the comedy moments, I think.
Who was that against again?
Blackburn,
was it? Yeah, when we weren't quite working, so we decided let's put Mate and Boye on for the wing backs, and just, you know what happened basically. So that is a good summary of what happened with Gomez. But for most improved player of 2019, the award goes to John Swift, and it's a huge sadness really that he's just going to be so rubbish next season, because that's how it always goes.
The traditional John Swift injury. He can only ever have half a good season.
Yeah, exactly. We're on the cusp now, aren't we really? And we move on to the Harold Robson-Kanu Award for Underachiever, and Harold Robson-Kanu continuing to show why the award is named after him, as he becomes a pretty important member of a completely rampant West Brom team at the moment.
He wanted to be here, obviously.
Sadly he's not been able to come down. He said if it's in Cardiff or Atletico Madrid then he can come, but sadly not for Reading. So the winners obviously in 2014 and 2013 for this award were Robson-Kanu. Jordan Obita won it in 15, a year after we won the Improved Player Award. Jake Cooper won it in 16, likewise. Sonny Aluko had it the last 2 seasons, and we were just talking off air that Sonny Aluko is eligible for it this season because he played in the early part of 2019. He played for a couple of games and probably produced his best form in those couple of games, scoring at Derby and then being carted off on loan. So Ollie has sent in his nomination. He's gone for Danny Loader, given the hype around him and how he's not been able to really improve as a player, you could argue, over the last 12 months. Myself and Johnny have gone for George Puskas on the basis that when you sign a striker for £5 million and he is a proven Championship experienced player, and you think, okay, that's brilliant, good idea, Then you go and sign an £8 million striker from Inter Milan 2 days later. You think, hang on a second, do we really know what we're doing here? And I think as it's shown out with Puskás, this was almost like when you go on a property show and someone buys a dusty old outback building in the middle of nowhere, and you think, hang on, they say, oh no, it's an up and coming property. In 10 years' time, this property is going to be worth 10 times what you paid for it. And at the moment, we're still looking at a bit of a rusty shack, thinking, when is this going to turn into some brilliant investment? And so far, George Puskás has shown glimpses, and he's shown how he has got a bit of a game in him. But otherwise, we have seen a very cumbersome, generally disinterested, and actually not brilliant finisher.
Yeah, Puskás is in danger of falling into the Matti Vidra role that we've seen, and lots of other great strikers that have come to Reading in recent years. If you think of the players we've actually had, people like Billy Sharp, Glenn Murray, Orlando Sarr, people like that, Lewis Graben, all great players that go on and suddenly they go to another club and they bang in 20 goals. But for whatever reason, it hasn't worked out at Reading for them. And Puskás has been slightly unlucky. Yes, he has missed, I'd say, 2 or 3 really good chances. But otherwise, it's not like he's getting 4 or 5 opportunities a game and he's missing them time and time again. He's just missing the big ones, which obviously isn't great when he's your club record signing and he's played for Inter Milan. But I don't think it's all down to him. I think he's been a bit of a victim of not great service.
Yeah, and I don't think the 3-5-2 really suits him either.
No, but it's difficult because this award is always tricky, because is this against, okay, we've invested so much money in him, so he should be doing this, or is it, what you realistically expect? And I looked at Puskás' record. He didn't bag loads of goals in Serie B, and yes, he came from Inter Milan, but he wasn't playing for Inter Milan.
Yeah.
So my expectations maybe weren't as high as some, but yeah, to have only scored in 3 or 4 games now for the club in his first 6 months isn't a great return. So I can see it. Loader's a good shout as well. But again, I think there are politics at play with Danny Loader.
With the contract situation,
exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it, and he's obviously being put in the team continuously off the bench, and I do kind of feel like that is the contract situation again, as Mark Bowen shows to him. See, we'll give you games, we'll give you what you need, and everything like that, and that's actually feels like to the detriment of, obviously we haven't got that many strikers.
At the moment, Danny Loader should only be playing football if Danny Loader is going to make a difference in that game. If you don't think Danny Loader is going to come on and change the game, there's no point giving him minutes for the sake of putting experience and giving him experience.
He's played about 30 championship games already, and he's not got any better.
I don't see the hype with Danny Loader, and I might well be sitting here in 12 months' time recording the next podcast, and Danny Loader's gone and bagged 5 goals for a resurgent Brighton side in the Premier League, and be sat and saying, "Yep, hands up, it's wrong." But so far, based on what I've actually seen of Danny Loader, I don't get the hype. I can absolutely understand why they're not giving him game time. This isn't a scenario like when you knew Steve Sidwell was leaving the club, where you go, Steve Sidwell is one of our best players. He has to play every week. I know we're going to lose him, but we can't play without him. There is no need to do that with Danny Loader at the moment, because he's, apart from that fantastic goal at Middlesbrough, he's not done it. So I think you might have swayed me actually to the Danny Loader side of things. So Danny Loader's going to be my official vote.
So we've got 2 for Puskás, 2 for Loader. Sim, do you want to jump in and throw a new hat in the ring, or...?
I was edging very strongly towards Loader, actually, just because he's just not done anything at all, considering the hype around him. But I am going to throw in another one, Lucas Boye, who at times I've liked a lot. On paper, he's a player that I really like. He's got a lot of energy, he loves to run. He actually works quite hard. He gets stuck in quite well for a loan signing. He's had to adjust from a different country, but he's played a decent amount so far, and he seems to make more errors than actually good moments. And his performance against Derby was
awful.
Was absolutely dreadful.
Awful.
It's not just the fact that he missed a really good chance. I think he had another cross blocked for Ovijaria in the middle. Really bad moments in the final third. He'll run around and just randomly commit a foul on an opposition player for no particularly good reason. Just giving away a stupid free kick.
His brain on Saturday was like, when you've overloaded your computer and it gets stuck on the little spinny wheel thing on a Mac or the little thing. That's what it seemed to be doing, is he was very slowly trying to figure out, what do I do with this ball in a great position. Just a dreadful football. The energy and the enthusiasm's there, but why he's getting in the team over a Michael Elise, who looked so good at the end of last season. And I'd be really curious. I don't think he's been asked about it too much in news conference, but I'll be fascinated to know what is the reason Elise's not getting in this matchday squad. Is it because the under-23 games are so close to the weekend and you want to get in the 90 minutes, or is there something you're not seeing, that we're not seeing, that goes on in the training ground that makes Boye get in?
Yeah, I think Barrett as well. He's already scored a couple of goals this season. He's got a couple of assists as well. And for people like Barrett and Elise to be sat on the sidelines not playing, and to see Loader doing nothing in the team, Boye doing nothing in the team, it's got to be pretty gutting for them. And
that's part of the reason why we've struggled late to come back in games. You think of the Charlton and Blackburn games early in the season. We didn't really have much off the bench.
No.
We didn't. I mean, Yakou Meite's not a brilliant impact player. I can't think of many times. He tends to score quite early in games rather than late on. It just leads us to a point where you turn around to your options, and the most effective substitute we've had all season has been Charlie Adam. And that's obviously, he's a good player and he's probably better on later in the games.
Yeah.
But other than that, you really you must turn around as Mark Bowen and think, well, you know, didn't he throw on Blackett late on against Stoke or something like that? I think, or Barnsley. He does those sort of. You end up doing those sort of things because a player like Boye, he played up front against Wickham and he missed a good chance and didn't have much going on. We still don't know if he's a winger or a striker because he hasn't got the finishing about him, but then he hasn't got the ball in either. So you're kind of at a loss with someone like Boye, aren't you, really? And Adam, I suppose you've almost got a cast-in vote if you choose to go with Puskas or Loader, or you can go with someone completely different.
Well, my main observation is we just seem to ruin every single striker that we sign or bring out of the academy. I am going to go with George Puskas because of the amount of money that we've spent, that we are going to spend. I don't think we've paid a lot of it this summer because of financial restraint.
Certainly haven't had to pay any performance-related bonuses, have we?
Yeah, but it's going to affect how much we can spend as well in future transfer windows.
Yeah.
And that's the frustrating thing with Puskas. I hope that he comes good, but again, we've spent about, is it £15 million combined on Puskas and Aluko? That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
20 million if you throw in Zhao as well.
Yeah.
How many goals in that? 10?
Yeah, and I think most of them come from Zhao in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And when you think we can throw in the likes of McNulty, although he's at Sunderland at the moment, we just seem to have ruined every striker that we've ever had, including, I mean, Vidra's the most classic kind of example, really. But yeah,
we've not signed a plug-and-play striker who's done well since Glenn Murray, really, have we?
And even Murray, he got off really well and then struggled until Clark came in. I think he scored like 3 in his last 2 games at the club to finish with about, I think, 7 or 8 in all.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I've said, it just goes back to that whole, where is the service coming from? And it's not been consistent enough. I mean, Zhao could well have been up for this award had it not been for the last couple of weeks. Picking up those 3 goals, yes, one was a very late last-minute consolation goal against Birmingham. But, you know, the one he scored on Saturday, and I think, what was the other one he got in this little run?
Barnsley as well.
Barnsley, that was a very
important goal. That was actually 2 defenders made a complete hash of clear in that corner.
But before this little mini run of the last 4 or 5 games, you could quite easily say Zhao for underachiever, because Reading had spent a lot of money in this. He didn't even have the Puskas defence of, I've come over from abroad, I don't know this league. Zhao has been playing in the Championship for 4 or 5 seasons, and we'd gotten 2 goals out of him before this run. He scored scored against us.
And he scored at Hull, and I think
that was a consolation goal. So he's got a point to prove, but thankfully he's in the last 2 or 3 weeks putting it together. But yeah, our track record with strikers is not good.
No, and I suppose it leads us to announce for 2019 the Hal Robson-Kanu underachiever of Reading Football Club on the Tile end is George Puskas. No applause necessary for that one. Golden moment, a bit of a positive one now. We can talk about in 2014 the Academy success story. Well, I don't know what happened to any of those players though. One in 2014.
Jack Stacey's doing well.
He is. We've made about 20 quid out of that, haven't we? Bradford FA Cup win in 2015. Lucas Piazzon scoring the clinching goal against West Brom in the FA Cup in 2016, which I think was one of our moments of the decade when we were doing. On the website, we've been doing moments of the decade. I did a piece on how we beat Bristol City 3-2 in 2011, and that West Brom win was one of the moments of the decade. It's probably as well as Fulham's second leg playoff win in 2017, and Manone saving the penalty in Paul Clement's first game against QPR for a 1-0 win in 2018. Now we've had a couple from Twitter to give us an idea for these ones. Alex Everson's gone with Mo Barrow's goal against Ipswich. Jamie Collis has gone for Obita's return and goal against Millwall. The Wigan winner is Ollie's nomination with Mate scored that, and Johnny's gone for Matt Miazga's winner in Bowen's first game in charge. So quite a lot there. I've gone with this isn't going to win, but my own selfish one is when the Tilehurst End got a shout out on the BT Sport commentary at the against Man United in the FA Cup. So apologies for anyone who thought it was the wrong podcast, but that was us getting a nice little mention on the.
Wait, there's another podcast.
So golden moment then. Weir, I'll give you the first go on this one. Where would you say your golden moment for the season, for the year, has been?
Yeah, I can't look past that Wigan game just for how much it meant in the context of staying up, and you know the great things it did for 1871 and the fan experience off the pitch. That was the real turning point for me of when fans really started to get behind the club again. And you know, we've been lucky that this year we've had sort of 4 or 5 golden moments, whereas I think last year we were really struggling to think of any.
Yeah.
So we've been lucky. There have been some real highs, but no, I can't see past that Wigan winner.
What do you think, Adam?
I think the same. To be honest with you, I think it all started from a drop ball where Wigan just weren't playing at all, and you've got Mo Barrow who like shoots it in from 25 yards. I mean, I haven't seen him really do that before.
Or since. Or ever in his career before.
Or since, no.
I don't follow the Turkish league very closely, so I don't know what he's doing at the moment.
And then you've got Mate, and just the roof came off the Majeski that night. That night? That afternoon. It was obviously a long day. But yeah, it was vital really for our season.
98th minute as well, wasn't it? So
yeah.
really long sort of game. And the funny thing is that game, there's a brilliant chance Wigan to go 3-1 up in that, and we claw our way back, and yeah, that single moment of the Mate winner. It was Mate. To credit him, he does pop up with those vital moments quite often, doesn't he? He doesn't tend to score unimportant goals, apart from the Fulham one earlier in the season, but that was a brilliant goal anyway, so I suppose can't really complain. Sim, where do you think for golden moment then?
As much as I want to give it to the Wigan game, I'm kind of loath to do it for what was actually a really bad performance that day, and the ending was fantastic, the atmosphere was fantastic, but what I think edges it for me is the John O'Shea moment right at the end of the season, getting his walk-on at Portugal Day on the last day of the season. All in all, it was not a great game of football, but for the occasion, for what it meant to the fans at the end of what had been a really stressful season, having those positive moments like John O'Shea getting his walk out at the end were just really nice way to see off the season. Yeah,
and I must admit I came very close to giving Portugal Day as a golden moment, because it's rare. You don't. It's not the sort of moment you get. You probably get those moments once every 4 or 5 years as a football team. Really, I suppose it'd be a bit fake if you had it every week. So that is one of the golden moments definitely. But the golden moment winner for 2019 is that Wigan win, the one that kept us up really. So congratulations to all involved in that, and congratulations also to those involved in the worst moment of the season, which has over the years has involved quite a lot of Wembley. Now I look back on it, we lost 6-1 to Birmingham in 2014. Arsenal beat us in 2015 at Wembley, obviously with Adam Federici's howler. The handling of Brian McDermott sacking in 2016 was the sour moment. Liam Moore hit the bar with a penalty in 2017 at Wembley, and Ipswich beat us 4-0 in 2018 in what's also the comedy moment. But nominations for this one, Ollie and Johnny are both gone with us losing 4-1 at home to Fulham, in a game which ended in Jose Gomez giving the fateful team talk on the pitch, which obviously, I suppose it didn't really get much coverage because no one was in the stadium by that point. But
never works out for managers, does it? Ask Phil Brown about that.
Yeah, no, it's funny that it's almost making an example of your players in public doesn't lead to them endearing with you much. But I've gone for my worst moment of the season is actually having to sack Gomez, because I wasn't 100% on board with him as a character. I thought he was a really nice guy. Having met him a couple of times, he's always very attentive and loves to talk football, loves to tell his story and everything like that. But in terms of the results, I did feel like it wasn't working out. Obviously, the reason it's the worst moment is because a lot of fans had become endeared to him, and that was a good thing. We had to sack a manager again, which was a bad thing because we have to sack a manager every year as it goes on. and just generally it felt like we'd had another false dawn, and to have to keep having false dawns, it's just really frustrating as a team.
Yeah, at the time it just felt like outright anger from the fan base, to be honest. There was a lot of apathy over the last couple of years with the way the club had kind of gradually declined under people like Stam, Clement, Gourlay as well, but it was outright anger when Gomez went. Obviously the results weren't great, but there were a lot of fans who felt really endeared to him, felt very invested in the idea of him turning around the club, because he had really put a lot of attention and a lot of care into connecting with the fans and really becoming a part of the club. People really appreciated that. So when he did get sacked, it felt like outright rage from a lot of fans, and that was just a really sad thing to happen, considering what he had achieved earlier on in the year.
Does he get your nomination for worst moment?
It does indeed.
Adam, where would you go?
I'm also going to go for the 4-1 loss against Swansea when the fourth goal went
the New Year's Day or the Fulham?
the New Year's Day one.
Of course, there was so many 4-1 defeats.
Yeah.
It's almost hard to catch up with them.
But when the fourth goal went, I think it might have been McBurney's penalty, the fourth goal, and they were just booing across the board. And the thing is, we'd only just got rid of Ron Gourlay and Gianluca Nani, and everyone was starting to get happier again, and we thought we had our club back and that sort of thing. And then I think we conceded like 3 first half goals, and then I think we went 4-0 down, and then it was only Callum Harriot's consolation which was the only good thing about that match. But apart from that, it was an awful way to start 2019, and I honestly thought at that point we were going to go down.
It was a nice moment for Callum Harriott though, because that was his first game back
Yeah,
in.
it could have easily been a golden moment. Really nice thing for him personally.
Yeah, after so many years out, or felt like years out at least. What would you say for worst moment?
Yeah, just on that Harriott thing as well, we didn't mention it, but Gareth McCleary scoring that goal against Luton as well.
Yeah.
Could have gone down as a golden moment. He's given an interview where, he said, what he went through this summer, and whilst I have sympathy with how the club handled it, and if you want to see a player leave, you have to do things that sometimes aren't great. So I could understand that from a footballing point of view, but sounds like what he went through personally was really tough. So for him to score that goal was a great moment for him. Worst moment, I can't agree with Gomez getting sacked. I tweeted on the day that Gomez had the worst win rate of any Reading manager in a century for the amount of games that he had taken over. So I can't have sympathy with that. I think there was a few, whether they're corroborated or not, there were quotes that he was seen as a used car salesman by some of the squad, and I think that when you actually look at what we achieved under him against some of how highly he was held by sections of the fan base, I do agree with that, because I go back to what I said at the start of this show. You look at some of those wins in the start of this year, and they were the skin of our teeth wins. So to me, he didn't prove a lot, and when he got sacked, I wasn't terribly sad to see him go, other than for the reason that the two of you said earlier. It was nice that fans were getting behind somebody, and we had positivity around the club. For whatever you thought of him from a results wise, I can't deny that, and Portugal Day was great. So, but I've got to go for that Fulham defeat. Just another awful home defeat. John Swift getting himself sent off for 2 stupid bookings early on.
God.
And that's just, again, that's what managers should be, he should be saying to John Swift, calm down, let's just take your time here.
Some people thought that the first booking should have been a red anyway, so it was warning signals go.
And so that Fulham defeat was just the absolute pits. Again, you felt that all of the good work, or what good work there was, had crumbled away, and we were really going to be up against it again. So all of those bad, the one against Swansea was also, terrible, and you did think at that point, oh well, maybe we are. I think that was about the only point in the season where I genuinely thought we were going to go down, because I'd always thought we had the quality and depth in the squad to just about be alright. But on that day, you did walk away from the Badaci thinking, am I looking forward to a trip to Wickham next year?
Well, to be fair, this time next season, with Wickham doing so well, it could well be on the cards.
But no, the Fulham defeat for me.
Yeah, no, that's claimed it then the worst moment of 2019. For the second year in a row has been a 4 conceding goal defeat at home to a team that, you know, I suppose were better than us in a way. But sad moment it was. Comedy moment then. The comedy moments have seemed to be a bit of schadenfreude in the last few years. We've had Burnley, the pitch invasion against Burnley in 2014 when we thought we got into the playoffs, or 7 people thought we got into the playoffs more accurately. Lady Sassama's song in 2015. Hal Robson-Carney scoring against Belgium in 2016. Lucas Piazzon returning to troll us in 2017, and then last year was Freddie Sears scoring the 4th goal of that Ipswich game from our own corner. The reaction to Mark Bowen's appointment from Ollie and Johnny has got their nod, so it's the memes and all of the snake vibes and whatever you want to talk about that one. There's my comedy moment is the fact that we went to Stoke and neither team had a shot on target for the entire game. That made the only things that Reading ever do that get wider attention these days is those sort of things. So when Bowen appoints himself, and then when we have no shots on target against Stoke, both of those two are the only things that people know we did this season. So that's my nod. Wayne, what would you say is your comedy moment?
I mean, the reaction to Bowen was just. I have some sympathy with the fans that went OTT and went, you know, snake and. You know, he's just appointed himself. This is a sham. The club is gone. Yada yada yada. I have some sympathy because we all clearly care about Reading Football Club, and even some fans that would say, "Okay, you're going over the top." You know, it's generally coming from a good place. Sometimes people are outraged for the sake of being outraged, but a lot of fans are just generally fed up. And you know, Bowen was just the target of their anger of the last. Probably even going beyond Stam, because I think a lot of fans, probably myself included, even in the Stam era, were. That frustration was building and building and building. So yeah, and then the latest thing is where it looks like the sporting director's given himself the job. I can kind of understand it. It didn't stop it being funny though, and those memes were great. I'm sure there's been a couple of goals we've conceded this season that would have me scratching my head and head in hand.
Yeah, the Barnsley goal we conceded away, having had our new pragmatic manager come in, and we pass it out from the back to probably Morrison, the worst ball player that we have in the squad. Yeah. And he just, you know, it's not even, did the ball ever leave the box? I don't think it did.
No, it didn't. No.
So you know, that's pretty.
And the 4th goal against Fulham as well, where Raphael was about 30 yards away from his own goal.
Yeah. Can I just rate? It's more of a broad, over the course of a series of games comedy. Is that goal kick technique, especially under Gomez, where all that would happen is we would just play the ball out to Morrison in the 6-yard box, who would then end up hoofing it because we didn't have a pass on. And you're just thinking, why are you not just playing it long in the first place?
I think it is on a Pro Evo in like 2001 or something, where if you pass it to the defender, then he passed it immediately back to the goalkeeper and powered up a really long kick, it would go further than the goal kick would. So people would just keep knocking it back and then kicking it rather than.
We've got this rule change. Well, we're just going to do it for the sake of it, just because we can now. We can play the ball inside the box from a goal kick, so I think we should do it. But it had no real purpose whatsoever. So that was a broad, scratching my head comedy moment of the year. But now I'll give it to the reaction to Bowen's appointment.
What would you say, Amanda?
I wouldn't really say this is comedy, but the most farcical moment of the year has to be the issue with the red-nosed. Is it red-nosed Day t-shirts?
Oh
the
yes.
limited edition. Yeah. It was beyond farcical. Everyone was really angry about the situation. I mean, Da Young was really generous in producing these shirts, but then it was just so badly organised that it just turned into an absolute farce.
It was available for £5, wasn't it? And there was only about 17 shirts going. So they said, how about 7,000 people come to the Medeski? You can all queue up in the rain, and then the lucky few of you who get through can then buy about 50 per person, and then no one else will have any, which is, it was organisation, guys.
I saw one on eBay and they were selling it for something like 50 quid.
Yeah, no, I've been to bands with about 7 people there where they've done the merch tent with more organisation than they've done the.
But you look back on it now and you think, why was everybody so hyped for it? Was it just because it was so cheap? I mean, it did look like a fairly nice football shirt.
Yeah.
But I don't go to Medeski and see very many people wearing them.
No, they only made about 10. So.
Oh yeah, I mean those 10 people. There's probably like a football team out there.
Yeah, 5-a-side.
Yeah.
I think it brought back memories of the 2011-2012 season with that red away kit. It's just 100%.
I think it was so cheap, to be honest. Sim, what's your comedy moment?
It's not my absolute comedy moment, but I think a word of mention for this. This bizarre kick-off routine we have at the moment, where we'll kick it off, play it back to Liam Moore, who'll play it off to Michael Morrison, who'll then boot it on the other end of the pitch. I don't think we've retained possession any time we've done it, and it's this new thing we've done under Bowen, and it just bemuses me every time we try it. My one though is the Forest game, or lack thereof, earlier this season, where a few of us, myself included, were about an hour away from Nottingham, not even that, when they decided to call the game off at short notice.
Only game that got postponed that day, didn't it, in the league?
Yeah. Because of a waterlogged pitch, and it left some of us with being stuck in Nottingham for an afternoon with nothing to do.
Is it going to be emerged like, do you remember when we got that game at Sunderland postponed, and then it turned out a few months later it was because of Bon Jovi?
Oh yeah, because they'd had a concert that had screwed up all their
So, can we blame Bon Jovi again?
And someone wrote a piece on the Tylehurst End a couple of years ago about how that Bon Jovi concert
There's John Keane, wasn't it? How
essentially relegated us.
Yeah, thanks Bon Jovi.
Yeah.
so Red Hot Chili Peppers. I think it's Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh, I thought it was Bon Jovi.
That's too fair.
Jovi,
Generic American band.
Generic 90s rockers ruined Reading Football Club.
They've been ruining Reading Football Club for years. I think the reaction to Mark Bowen's appointment then is the comedy moment of 2019. So well done Twitter on that.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you've stolen our hearts again. A couple more to get through then before we crack on with the final part of the show. The Pavel Pogrebniak Award for the most missed player. Now in 2015 we gave this to Adam Federici, 2016 Aaron Tish-Bowler won it, 17 was Danny Williams, and last season was Jordan Abita, who was of course injured for the entirety of 2018. We've had Ollie and Talk Wedding on Twitter have said Lewis Baker for this. Johnny's gone with Nelson Oliveira, although he admits, like I'm gonna in a minute, is that it's not really a very easy award to give this year. So I'm going to give it to Emiliano Martinez, because I think he has, in terms of the amount of points he saved for the club, Rafael's a good keeper, I like him, but I think Martinez was better, and therefore I'm going to go with Martinez. Is anyone going to make a claim for Jose Gomez being their most missed asset of Reading Football Club?
No.
Because I'd imagine some people probably out there would think that, but
His number 2 might get the nod for his being absolutely great to
George
watch on the
Mendonça,
sideline. That's the one. Being great to watch on the sideline.
no, true. So Sim, where do you think for your most missed player?
Lewis Baker for me. Just the range of passing he had, the excellent level of technical ability that he had that we haven't really seen very often, and to lose that and essentially replace him with Charlie Adam a couple of months later really said a lot about just how frustrating that transfer window could be at times, that we lost a really good player and just didn't manage to get him back.
Yeah, he's having a shocking time out in Germany though, so we can probably nab him back soon enough if we fancy he's coming back. William, who would you say for your most missed player?
Martinez is a good shout, although I think Rafael, he had a really good game on Saturday against Derby, made some good saves. So it's not quite, I think in my scale of Reading goalkeepers, Rafael is kind of at that Phil Whitehead level of good, solid, but not great, rather than your sort of Hanneman level where probably Martinez was heading. But do we miss him? Have I looked at the goalkeeper position and gone, I really miss Martinez?
Well, if we'd have kept on with João Virginia, then yes, probably.
Baker, I'd find it hard to vote for him, because I think when we've got the Swift Runamota Ajaria combination, I'm not sure Baker would even get in the team, so I can't say I'm missing that much. I'll probably go with Johnny actually for Oliveira, because I think he was that real focal point striker that could create things on his own in that Nicky Forster, Kevin Doyle, Shane Long kind of way that Puskás and João and Baldock don't quite do. Each of them sort of does a little bit, but you really thought that Oliveira's going to get us a goal. So I think it was at Ipswich where he goes and scored whilst wearing the face mask.
And then he danced in front of the Ipswich fans who've been taunting him for getting stamped on.
And I would have loved to have seen Reading sign him. Obviously the financial terms weren't right. I think he wanted a lot of money, and Norwich.
He also did very much drift in that latter part of the season as well. He had an injury to his hamstring, I think, and then he came on for his return game. He only lasted like 10 minutes, I think.
Yeah, they rushed him back. He went off for like aqua therapy. There was pics of him, wasn't it?
This miracle doctor. Santos, I think it was, if I remember correctly, and that did more harm than good apparently.
But when he was good, I think that is the one player out of all the ones we've sort of seen leave over the past few months. Or also though, maybe Modou Barrow. Because I miss having that real pace option, and again, like we were talking about with the Ajaria getting you on your feet. When Barrow got the ball, you did think something might happen. You probably suspected it was going to end with the ball in the Dolan, but there was always that chance that he was going to break through and beat a couple of players on the edge of the box and get the ball in. So but I will go for Oliveira.
Yeah, Oliveira, that goal against Blackburn that he scored in 87th minute win or whatever it was at the back end of last season was a fantastic goal. Swift playing a long ball over to him and he takes it down, beats his man and from 18 yards hits the bottom corner, and that's the level of quality that you get from someone who, you've got to remember, Oliveira was touted in Portugal as being like a first choice international striker for a number of years and obviously didn't quite make it. So Adam, where do you think you're going to...
It's between Barrow and Baker for me. Barrow because, as Wim said, it gives us a different option on the wing. And he kept us up on his own really in that 2017-18 season after the playoffs. But I will go with Lewis Baker just because he provided a lot of balance in midfield. He could do a little bit of everything, which I didn't think he really had in his game previously when I've seen him on loan at like Sheffield Wednesday and Leeds United. But I think we do miss Lewis Baker, and I think it was baffling that Bowen said, I don't think we need him back.
Yeah, well, he's probably hopefully that's just a way of him saying to his current squad that they're good enough.
Because you don't want to, you don't want to put in Rinomhota's head that actually you're only playing because I can't get Baker in, and that that's the point I made. When it was working well, that Swift Ejaria Rinomhota combination is great, and does Baker get in there? I mean, you might say he does, Adam, but I don't know. I think Bowen was more talking in terms of my first choice. Obviously, he's better than Pele.
Yeah, Pele is not really...
He was also a very good shout. He would have been a good shout for the Hal Robson-Kanu Underachiever Award.
Yeah, but to be honest, he came with such low expectations anyway, as a player who played 9 times for Forest last season.
Yeah, still from Monaco though.
Well,
I think it's testament to Swift that he's settled in so well in that defensive midfield role. Which I didn't think he did that too.
He's been very good at that. So congratulations to Lewis Baker. We miss you. Is the official word of the Tilehurst End. And
we will be outside your house with a boombox playing Lady Sassama's song.
If you hear some chinks against your window, that's us throwing little stones in it. So, and final award then is the breakout prediction, and this one, it's not had really the cursing effect as the most improved player, but in 2013 we predicted Royston Drenthe was going to break out. Sadly, that was out of his waistline, so that's
his rap career.
that's gone now. So Dominic Savio in 2014, Jonathan Bond in 2015, Yaku Meite in 2016, Omar Richards 17, and Loda 18. There's kind of a 2-year delay in this, isn't really? Because Meite had a good 18, Richards had a good, you could say, 19, and hopefully Loda's going to have a good 20. But for the actual 2019 breakout prediction, myself, Ollie and Johnny have all gone with Michael Elise as someone who seems to have that bit of creative spark from him and such a young age, and seems to, generally speaking, when he has played, he looks like he can handle himself in the rough and tumble of the Championship. Whether he has an end product yet is obviously TBC. Whether he can, do a defensive side of his game and really become a useful player all round is also sort of, something we have to work on. But I think as the academy's sat now, he is the one that I have to say, is the best option. Adam, what would you say for your breakout?
This is a big if, but if we go to 5 at the back and Miazga returns in the summer, I honestly think Tom McIntyre could do a really good job. I know he's already played for the first team already a couple of times, but I think he has a lot of ability. I think he's very underrated in the academy, and he's been at the club since he was like 6 years old. He's a supporter of the club, and I saw an interview with him, his mum, Gabe Osho, and his mum as well. And I just really like the guy. I really want him to do well. Out of all of them, I really want him to do well.
Yeah, no, he only lives down the road from me. Apparently, he lives in Early, so it's not not someone who you can sort of pass up lightly, really. Because when you've got someone with that much of a connection to the club, you kind of want to make the most of it. Sim, where would you say you're going for a breakout prediction?
Finding it hard to look past Elise, to be honest. Really good technical ability, really positive, as he showed in that Birmingham game earlier this year. He just loves to make things happen, and if he does get given the chance, which you would have thought he will do eventually, then you think he's eventually play and get that opportunity. Otherwise, Thierry Nevers looks pretty promising in the academy. Adam Niddle has been scoring a couple of goals as well. Yeah. It depends who gets played basically over the course of the year, but out of all of those, I think Elise is most likely to get given that chance.
Yeah, Wim, any advance on that?
Yeah, I mean, Elise is the one you look at. We got a teasing glimpse of it. Was it the West Brom game? I thought he outshone the likes of Loda that day. I thought he's a fantastic prospect, and I don't understand why he's not been in the team. But that does give me pause to pick him because there's obviously something that's preventing him being in and around that first team squad. So whether I would say for 2020 he's going to break out, I don't know. I could quite easily see him going on loan. McIntyre's a really good shout as well, and I think he's a realistic one because whether we end up signing Matt Miazga would then possibly open up a slot for him at the start of next, and even possibly towards the end of this year. If it's looking apparent that actually we're not going to get Miazga, you would probably be blooding McIntyre a bit more, getting him that experience. I'll probably go Elise, but actually for a real left field one, I might. You might have to stop your car and pull over for this one. I might say Sonny Aluko.
I know what you mean on that.
Sonny Aluko, is there this possibility that he comes back after a rubbish year in China and Mark Bowen just puts his arm around him and says, look, expectations of this club for you are rubbish. We ideally want you to leave, but who's going to take him?
Well, he's not technically back, I think, until the end of January.
Is it the end of January or is it the start?
Yeah, it's at some point during January.
I think I've seen people saying I've spotted him in Waitrose.
The Chinese season has ended.
Yeah.
So he's obviously not stuck around in Beijing because why would he basically? But he's and it's unlikely that someone's going to come in for him in January.
Yeah.
He's on good wages, obviously. He's not young. So he is effectively stuck at Reading Football Club.
He's got 18 months on his deal. So this is the thing as well. It's not like it's going to be one of those things where Reading say, right, do you know what, we'll pay up your last 6 months. And kind of what they did to people like Dave Edwards.
Yeah.
They kind of basically subsidised his exit from the club. I'm sure they'll try and find a buyer for him because I can't imagine Reading want to sit 30 grand a week on in
There's
a vague...
not going to be a big welcome back sign.
No.
Gets
But
back into the...
if he ends up at the football club beyond January and Bowen does put his arm around and says, look, you're here now, I want you to get your head down, I've seen what you can do as a footballer, and let's not forget that player who did impress for Fulham and did reasonably well at Hull and even did okay for us in January still should be there. He's not over the hill physically.
Yeah.
So if I was picking from a complete left field point of view, I might say Sonny Aluko, but my official vote is going to be registered for Elise.
Yeah, no, I think the Aluko, it's something is going to have to happen there.
Yeah.
Because he's not viable for the club just to sit him in the reserves for 18 months. Someone isn't really. I can't believe that someone's. Are we going to loan him back to Beijing again? Did they get relegated or? They were certainly having a bad season. So something's got to give basically. And if Bowen's got. I can't imagine Bowen's going to take one look at him and say no, never.
Again, we talked about the options on the bench. It's not like he's facing stiff competition. I mean, Gareth McCleary, bless him, he's shown that he can do a job.
And he probably almost certainly will be leaving in 6 months' time.
I mean, the question is, in terms of the breakout prediction and the youth, how do you bed in the youth players in terms of the likes of Howe, Richards, Tom McIntyre? And you do look at a five at the back because I think Omar Richards is better suited as a left wing back. I think it would be a gamble to have Howe just as a normal fullback. I think it would be better if he was a right wing back. And then you've got Rinomhota and maybe Elise as a cam or something. But then you've got Ajaria and you've got Yiadom, and it's going to be hard to see how the younger players are going to break through.
And you don't know who's going to go in the summer as well, because this is the other thing. It's spots open up, and that's how Rinomhota ends up as your midfielder by October, because players leave and you don't replace them. Is it a case of Moore gets sold and we don't sign Miazga back, and then suddenly it's McIntyre who gets his chance, or Abita re-succumbs to injury, so suddenly it's Richards left back week in week out, or a striker position we can't hold on to Ajaria. It's Elise's chance, so it's often opportunity, which is really hard to predict 12 months in advance.
I do feel bad for Medford Smith as well, because you've got Blackett in front of him, Abita in front of him, and Richards in front of him.
Yeah.
How is he ever going to make it at Reading?
Goalkeepers as well. There's that. Yeah. Who's the good goalkeeper?
Konya Boyce Clark is the 17-year-old. I think he is now in amongst the under 23, so he's now above his age grade already. You can say.
And Danny Loader again as well could easily be a contender if Reading managed to get this contract issue sorted out with him and he puts pen to paper. Yeah. Could he then show this promise that does have clubs like Wolves looking at him? So.
Yeah, well, I suppose that means the breakout prediction winner for 2019 is Michael Elise. Good luck, Michael. We look forward to seeing you doing well in 2021, because that's usually how these things work out. And a big clap, because at the end of these clappings we'll be going into the preview for 2020.
For all the latest Reading news, analysis and opinion, visit the website at thetilehurstend.com.
So 2020 is on the horizon, and we're left to look towards a year which, generally speaking, you can look at it one or two ways. You can say it's very, very boring and it's going to be exactly the same as the last 12 months. Reading, nothing will change, everything's normal. Or you can look at it on the slightly more optimistic sense, I suppose, and say this is the Championship, anything can happen. And which sort of mind are you in? Are you the mind that there's a lot that can change in the next 12 months, or do you think it's kind of we're stuck in a bit of a groove now and it's hard for us to get out of it?
In a way, I don't want too much to change, because you finally want to see Reading building towards something. You want to see a progression and a pathway for Reading to start signing players again who are on the way up, and stop trying to patch up the boat with older players on their way down and overpaying. You want to see the players we've just mentioned in the breakthrough potential. You want to see them breaking through, and you want to see them given chances to do so. Managerial stability would be fantastic. I really, really hope that we're sat here talking about Mark Bowen, because if Bowen is still here in 12 months, we're obviously doing something right.
Yeah.
So you definitely want to see that. And look, anything can happen in the Championship. I would not be stunned if we're in May in a playoff race. But likewise, I wouldn't be more stunned to see us down at the bottom. I do think that we are looking up now. We should be looking up.
Yeah, I'd be genuinely surprised if we're a League One club.
Absolutely,
next season, because we're too good basically. Yeah. We're winning
absolutely, but you just want to see building blocks, and you want to see momentum, and you want to see consistency. It's great that we've pulled off 2 clean sheets in a row in the last 2 games. Yes, one came in the most boring way possible, but as I've said throughout the show, Bowen's showing pragmatism. That's great, and that's what you want to see going forward, because you've got a manager that's assessing things and the conditions on a game by game. He's not being stubborn, he's not sticking to one thing, he's trying to find different solutions to different problems. And I'm cautiously optimistic, touch on wood, that over the next 12 months we will see more of the same.
Yeah, Media Mentor sends in a question just asking, are we worried about FFP at the moment? Keeps being hinted by some journalists. Is the club in a precarious position financially? Sim, I don't think we're in immediate danger with that. I think we're very good at not doing anything dodgy, but doing the things that are within the rules. Just make it very clear it's not
bending
dodgy.
The rules.
Yeah, making it's not loopholes even, but making sure we're aware of the bits we're doing aren't bad bits, basically, but still managing to find some money somewhere. I do think that means we're not going to spend much at all, if anything, in January. But I think in terms of the immediate future of the club, I think we're probably just about hanging on.
Yeah, I think we're fine at the moment. It's just more of a balancing act going forwards. Obviously, we've got players out of contract in the summer that's going to help. Hopefully move a lot of them on and just rebalance the club financially a little bit. But when you've still got people like Aluko here on relatively long-term deals, I think Baldock's probably on quite a lot, Walker's probably on quite a lot. There's still a long-term thing to rebalance that. Obviously got the stadium situation in the background as well. I think it's Sheffield Wednesday who are in a little bit of trouble with
for having
with the
sold their stadium to themselves, basically.
Exactly, and they seem to be cracking down on that at the moment, or at least looking into it in some way. And if we haven't been really careful with the way that we did it, maybe there's going to be a bit of a worry there, but obviously too early to tell until anything concrete comes out, but it's one to watch.
Yeah, and looking ahead to our upcoming games then, Adam, over the Christmas period we've got QPR at home, Preston away, Fulham away, and then Blackpool at home in the Cup. Those 2 home games, I think really there's no excuse for not winning both of them.
Winnable.
And those 2 away games are really 3 punts as well.
I think so, and I think if we can get anything out of Preston away or Fulham away, I think it's a bonus. It would be ideal if we did get a point away at Preston, just to stabilise ourselves a little bit. But I think we have to try and be as consistent as possible, no matter what the opposition is, because if we can get the consistency going into the end of the season, then we can get a bit of a momentum. But yeah, it's going to be a hard couple of away games, but the 2 home games are completely winnable. What I would like to see in the Blackpool home game in the Cup is some of the younger players being blooded.
Well, that's what I was going to ask next, actually, is the thing is with that Blackpool game is it's the ideal game, really. You can't ask for a better tie in the FA Cup third round. A cup run would be really, really nice this season. I think we're probably just about safe enough for it to be the sort of thing we can maybe even prioritise if we end up in that scenario. Do we therefore think, let's have a bit of a go at it? We've not drawn Man United this season for once. Let's make the most of that. Or do you kind of risk it with the Blackpool game? I don't think they're doing too badly. Are they League One now, Blackpool?
Yeah, top half the table.
Yeah, they're not doing too badly at all. So is it actually the sort of game you think, let's play our relatively decent first team and then try and build some more momentum for them out of that?
Yeah, 100%. I think you've got to go for it. I mean, you can obviously take certain calculated risks. I mean, look, if John Swift still isn't fully fit, give him a rest. If Ejaria is looking, players that really need a rest, you might rest them. But players that are, sort of doing well and going on nicely, you don't just rest them just for the sake of giving Elise a game. If your preferred forward options are fit and raring to go and you judge them on the training ground, put them in. You beat Blackpool, you're into round 4, get another decent home draw. That's how cup runs go. I mean, look at our run to the semi-finals. We have Huddersfield on the way,
Derby, Cardiff, Bradford.
Yeah, you get these winnable games, and before you know it, you've got a really massive thing to look forward to, which is an FA Cup semi-final to play for, or a final. You have to go for these things, and we are in that position, I think, especially after the win on Saturday, where you can start to not ignore the teams behind you, but you've got that little bit of safety. It's not every game's that precious 6 points. Both Bowen as a manager and the squad have got that confidence in the bank to go, okay, well look, we have a bad result in the league over Christmas, it's not the end of the world. Let's go and give this cup run a thing. And we talked about financial fair play. A cup run can have a massive effect of that as well.
Yeah.
You get through Blackpool, and even if we get the bad luck, so to say, of drawing Man United away, that's £500,000 in the club's coffers, and that is an important boost as well. Get through that, get through a couple of games, the prize money starts building up, and that can be the difference between keeping a Matt Miazga next season. So from both a financial and a fan enjoyment point of view, absolutely go for it.
But I think the golfing class between some of the first team and some of the younger players is getting a lot narrower. I think you've got Howe, who looks okay. I think again McIntyre, probably one of my favourite players, who's done a really good job in the first team, especially Huddersfield away, coming on from Miazga and keeping a clean sheet at the John Smith Stadium. But yeah, I do take the point that we've got to kind of. It would be nice to have a nice cup run.
With that kind of in the bank, then I suppose we can talk about the wider what we're going to experience over the next 12 months. And Matthew Bird sends in the question: how do you think the team will look this time next year? And by that I mean let's kind of consider what sort of team we'll be building towards. Are we going to have do you think that actually there's a good chance that this team we have now might only have a couple of changes in it by the end of the 12 months, because if we can keep Ejaria and Swift in and Minamoto, I can't see why that would change in 12 months from sitting here. Goalkeeper, probably not going to go anywhere. Right back, 2 of your centre backs are pretty decent contracts now. Seems okay from here.
Absolutely, but to show you how much things can change in a year, here is the lineup from New Year's Day last year. Yakola in goal, Yiadom, John O'Shea, Thiago Ilori and Omar Richards. John Swift, McCleary, Rinamota, Aluko, Barrow, Mate. So you've lost Yakola, you've lost O'Shea, you've lost Ilori, you've lost Aluko, you've lost Barrow. So 5 out of the starting lineup.
All improvements, I'd argue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Come in.
And even on the bench, you had Walker, Moore, Osho, Kelly, Harriet, Bodvarsson and Loader. So you're talking about, 10 out of the 18 have gone?
Yeah.
Or aren't currently at the club and in the plans? So a hell of a lot can change, but as I was sort of saying earlier, I want to see more consistency, and we do seem to have that foundation. The key is going to be the lone players like Miazga, Ejaria. Although the Ejaria one's weird because I think it's an obligation to buy.
Supposedly it's £3 million, and that sounds so good, it's almost too good to be true, and I'm worried something's happening.
It could be one of those weird things though where we actually end up. Who was it? Was it Bournemouth did it with Benik Afobe? Yeah, we actually end up signing a player and he then goes. Because if he continues on this path, I'm sorry, but he's going to be too good. He will be too good for us. Now you can't keep. We've seen it with the likes of Sigurdsson in the past. You can't keep these players very long. So, and also, we talked about FFP. Reading needs to get back. As much as I hate to say it, Reading needs to get back to the model they had under Sir John of cutting your cloth. We need to develop players and then sell them so that we're not relying on selling our stadium or having massive cash injections. We need to be seeing these players like Elise. If they're not going to take us to the next level, you need to make a lot of money on them and hope that then use that to reinvest. Look what McDermott did. He had to sell Gylfi Sigurdsson, but he used it to buy Kasper Gorks. Oh no, it wasn't that. He used it to buy
he sold Shane Long. Shane Long and Matt Mills went after the playoff year, and then we signed Gore, It was Gorks for
Gorks,
20,
Lafondra.
yeah, Gorks
Joseph
was that
Mills.
summer.
Yeah.
Lafondra was for that summer.
Sangani Kumalo
Yeah.
as well,
Yeah, Kumalo.
Icon.
Exactly. Yes. So you need to sort of, sell high and then invest sensibly and sort of bring people.
We signed Ledgerwood permanently that summer.
The model that teams like Brentford have done,
Yeah.
where
Yeah, that's the
they
one.
develop the likes of Neil Morpay, goes for big money, and then they use it to reinvest, and they've got an Ollie Watkins that's going to happen again.
Yeah.
The key is getting that balance right, because you don't want to end up.
Southampton is the key
Exactly.
case where you just run out. You not only you run out of good players to sell, but you realise that the players you've signed are crap.
Yeah, but at
So
least
therefore, you get
generally
nothing.
those clubs at least stay at a fairly middling level.
Yeah, oh, I mean,
as opposed to Reading that sign players who are, as I said earlier, on the way down, and then you're stuck with a Vito Minone, a Shoni Aluko on your books, and you can't get rid.
And I think that's the kind of thing that we're trying to do with George Puskas. I think even though we signed him for 8 million, I think the club are thinking we could sell him on here if he does well for 20 plus million. It looks unlikely at the moment, but we'll soon see.
The best thing that can happen to Puskas is if Romania qualify for the Euros, because he has got it in him to score 2 goals against the Euros. He's only been playing like Ireland or whatever he plays in the Euros. Scores 2 goals against them, scores against a game against Spain or whatever else they're playing. Then suddenly his value is like £20 million, as you say. And Reading in that scenario, I don't think. Yes, we did it. We decided against selling Liam Moore. We changed our mind at the last minute about selling Danny Loader. We don't know the numbers involved there. Maybe it was good, maybe it's a bad decision. But even we can understand that surely someone offers us £25 million for George Puskas, that's a good deal to take.
He's just going to do a Harold Carner and do a Cruyff turn against Belgium and stick him in
That's
the back
brilliant.
of the
So
net.
long as he doesn't do it the day before his contract expires, I'm very happy for him to do
Yeah.
that.
I think just on that thing about the model, I would love to see us do that as well. Be a lot more sustainable, a lot more forward thinking with our model. But it seems to be more that we're trying to play around the rules, obviously not breaking them, but with bringing in loan players, with spending a few million on a player over the course of a couple of years rather than all in one. We're trying to work around the rules rather than do anything a bit more kind of long term.
We're putting plasters on the problems. We're not. We're not. It's.
We don't make money.
Yeah, you're not fixing the problem. You're just taking painkillers. You're not getting to the end. You're not curing the disease. It's just you patched it along and getting through to the next window. Oh God, what can we do to patch it up next season?
Yeah, and I do think kind of in amongst that, I do think January is going to be very quiet. Because I don't think we're going to have loads of players to sell.
Depends if they get out the door. If they can get Minone out, if they can find a buyer for Luco, it frees up
that will
wages.
free up about £40 a week in wages. But then I still think that's only loan players.
But they need to go. They need to be. Well, it's my opinion. They need to be looking down the leagues again, the way we used to. The way we used to get a Nicky Shorey through. The way you used to get, or look at teams that are in Premier League squads and that just aren't getting games, like Ajaria. Just getting them into the club and just saying, okay, look, we'll pay $1 million to get this player who's not getting a game at Arsenal, as they did with James Harper and Steve Sidwell.
John Swift was another good
John
signing
Swift.
from that book. Yeah.
So this is the problem we have with Boye and Pele and players like that. However well they play for the rest of the season, we're not going to see any long-term value for that.
Yeah.
They're going to go back. If they do play well, they're going to go back to their parent clubs, or to get sold on to a much bigger club than us. If that does happen, and we just don't make the long-term improvements. But when you do have people like Swift here, Ajaria, Yiadon, Rinham, Hota, there is long-term value. So at least from that point of view, I see some improvement, some long-term development.
We talked about it earlier in the show, but we're not at that stage we were last January where we needed that spine again.
We don't need to build an 11.
We can garnish it. It's like, okay, we're lacking a bit of width. Is there a great, the Josh Sims kind of player that's on the fringe at Southampton that we can get in, that's got a certain attribute and can add something to the squad? And that's what we need to be doing now.
Yeah, no, it's funny. And in terms of where our expectations have changed as well, does it feel like over the last 12 months our expectations have changed significantly? Because we were thinking of staying up, obviously, this time 12 months ago. Now it does feel like we have nudged up a little bit, but it felt like the nudging happens a few months. It felt like we changed our expectations almost in spring, in April sort of time, wasn't it? Yeah. And since April they've kind of middled out a little bit.
I think ever since Gomez has done well in terms of the Wigan game, I was looking forward to next season. I was thinking, let's just get mid-table next season, build slowly, and let's not go up too quickly, because the chances are we'll only come back down again if we build up too quickly. I think that's what's happened to some clubs. So yeah, I honestly think that my expectation at the start of this season was mid-table, even though we had signed Ejaria and Puskas and that, and it remains at mid-table now, most definitely.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. And let's move on then and talk about the Prediction League, which has currently bottom at Christmas. I'm afraid to say, Handbags, you are currently sitting in that position on 6 points at the moment. Wim, you on 9 points at the moment for the Prediction League.
No,
I think this is this a classic case of second season syndrome. I think almost having last season been so decent.
Over the 5-6 years of Prediction League, I always do this, go up and down. We're just a very tricky team to predict this season.
Well, thank you very much, because Westy's on 11, Ollie's on 12, Johnny 13, then Sim, you're currently second on 14. You've had a actually decent little run, Sim, recently. You got 3 results in a row, and in amongst that you nailed Barnsley completely correct. And then
nosebleed territory here. I don't think I've ever been this high.
Yeah, well, you say that from 14 points you're on. I'm on 22 points at the top at the moment, and if you're getting nosebleeds, I'm currently not able to breathe the oxygen because it's a bit of a strange one that I've managed to get it. To be honest, the ones I've got so far are the away games. So I got Huddersfield, Middlesbrough, Swansea, Bradford and Brentford and Barnsley all perfectly correct away from home. So I suppose I've just managed to magic some sort of pattern out of that. So in terms of the upcoming game, Boxing Day evening, we have QPR at home. So who wants to jump in with a prediction for that then?
I'm going to go for 1-0. I think we tend to have 1-0s against QPR.
They tend to be
I'm going to go
not
for
very good.
1-0 either way, but I just fancy to have that edge, have that little bit of hard to beat quality that we haven't really had, and I think we'll manage it. Yeah.
1-0 win there. What do you think, Adam?
I'm in the process of writing the match preview, and I've gone with 2-1 Reading. Very narrow home win, but I think we'll get the 3 points, I hope. But every time I've predicted a win, we've either drawn or lost, so that's it, that's the curse.
Yeah, well, that is especially with our home games. I think Birmingham, Blackburn and Charlton were all clean sweep. No one predicted a defeat at least, and we didn't get that. I'm probably going to say a 2-0 Reading win, because we played very well against QPR earlier in the season. They had a pretty poor result on the weekend, I seem to remember. And also, we do well in the TV cameras. We're doing alright at home this season. I think a 2-0 win is what I'm going to go with at the moment. Although the problem is with predicting that result in and of itself sounds pretty normal, but it does mean us keeping a third clean sheet in a row, and you have to question, are we that good? So,
but I think even with the disappointment in the Barnsley game and the Stoke game, we're still not conceding that many.
Exactly, that's what I mean.
And as frustrating as it is that we did have pretty bad, miserable draws on the road, we're still picking up that little bit of a solid foundation at the back. Obviously, apart from the really bad area at Barnsley, but it's the kind of thing that you do get some momentum from.
Yeah, Leeds only scored against us with a deflected cross, didn't they? So
being hard to beat is the first step. It gives you forward players more confidence that, oh God, I'm not going to have to bag 2 or 3 for us to win this game. One goal can do it. I'm going to go 2-1 to Reading as well. I do think we'll concede. I think QPR. I mean, is Naki Wells fit? Because that's a nailed-on goal, surely.
Yeah, well, he did sort of score against us a lot as well, didn't he? So
2-1, Naki Wells, first goal scorer. You heard it here last.
Yeah, you've only got all of history to go back to tell you what's going to happen for that. So that just about draws to a close our Christmas podcast. This show is not going to return. Obviously, we're going to give ourselves a little bit of a time off. I think the Monday after the Blackpool game is when I'm going to be back in the hot seat for a podcast action. Until then, however, there are plenty of things going on the Tyler Stent amongst that. Obviously, we've got the games we'll be covering. Ollie Allen is also running his Decade Memories sort of podcast. I don't know what the title is at the moment, but he's going to be going through with a couple of people each show. He's going to square off, I think it's probably 3 or 4 different eras of the 2010 decade that we've just coming to an end of, and talking through what's been the most important moments, the biggest highs, the biggest lows of that over those few years. So definitely keep an eye out for those. They're going to be being released between now and the new year, I think. So keep an eye out for those. And that leaves me to thank you guys for coming down. Wim, always a pleasure to have you back on.
Mark, thank you very much. And again, I'm not as heavily involved anymore, barely at all. But thank you to everyone at the Tyler Stent for continuing to pump out the content. It's always great reason stuff, and for people listening to this podcast, yes, you might hear Mark plug Patreon and stuff, but most of the stuff these guys do for free. So if you do enjoy it, not just, you know, obviously get on the Patreon and give them a bit of a dosh, but more importantly, if you're someone who's sat at home thinking, do you know what, I've got a few opinions on a player or an issue, you know, get in touch, email them at thetilehurstend@gmail.com. Like Adam, who's got on board, you know, there's always spaces on the podcast and on the website, unless Sim's going to interject here and tell me I'm wrong. He is the boss these days. But yeah, keep getting involved with the podcast and the website, because it is, you know, I set it up by the fans for the fans, and it's that support that keeps it going. So yeah, if you're a budding young writer or someone who's coming to the end of their career and got a few bits of extra time, get involved.
Well, absolutely. There's always space for the next generation.
And where's my fee for that plug?
I think it's behind the bar. If you go there, take ages getting there, then I'll have gone
I did
by the time you
notice
come
that
back.
years of plugging Gambleware got Star an award.
Yes, finally the what was that? The FSA Awards, the
Yes.
Fan Engagement Award, which I was kind of thinking like a read that, but obviously we're not that for whatever reason. But the Fan Engagement Award sponsored by Gambleware, which is you know, finally it pays off.
Absolutely,
you know?
yes. So happy Christmas and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you all, and thank you, Mark.
And hopefully that Evian water sponsorship is going to come through eventually
One day.
as well,
One
because
day.
that's really, they have fueled us for many years. Sim, as well, thank you very much for coming down.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And Adam, thank you as well.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And as Dan said, really, if you are interested in Reading Football Club, if you are a bit opinionated and you do think that your words deserve an audience wider than Twitter, then the Tilehurst End is the best place to do that, and the first place that I want people to be emailing us on thetilehurstend@gmail.com, obviously Facebook and Twitter as well. We'll be here over Christmas, and hopefully if anyone wants to join us, the next generation is always needed, because as father of one now, Dan knows that you cannot do a podcast while you have a baby sat behind you.
Absolutely not. I mean, she'll be on the show before you know it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So certainly need that gender representation's turning around a little bit, don't we? So anyone who wants to get in touch and get involved, please do. And that brings to an end to this show. Hopefully we'll see you again in the new year, as I said, with Ollie's podcast coming up as well. There's plenty of content to enjoy from all the way through 2019. You think we've had Jose Gomez on, Simon Cox, Glenn Little, so much to trawl through if you find those Christmas days a bit quiet and those dark nights a bit lonely. So we're always happy to be there with you. And until the new year, everyone, please have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And come on, you arse.
You smile, funny how the crumbs always leave a trail, even when it seems on your tail. Funny how I always leave a trail. You smile, why? Why do you sit on this side of the street? Please tell me why. Why don't you break this old biscuit for me? This biscuit for me. Making your mark on the main wire. Drink plenty of courage, you're starting to see. Kissing out a couple, which you do it for me. Damaged by elephants, you start to It's fun.